So I guess that's the first thing we should clarify, because there seems to be a complete lack of understanding in this chamber at the moment that what Senator Cash proposed is a motion. It's not a bill. It's got nothing to do with territory rights. It's a motion to set up an inquiry. And remember those opposite when they were all about transparency. I mean, we know that was just all talk before an election, but we have seen Senator Pocock also claim that he wanted transparent government, and the Greens purport that they'd like to see transparent government. But we know, given any opportunity to block an inquiry that's proposed by the coalition, they will team up, Team Green and Pocock with the Labor Party, and oppose any inquiry that might shine a light in the dark places of the policy agenda that they're pushing forward. And these ACT government laws are extremely concerning. They are incredibly concerning laws that will be in effect in less than a fortnight. And we know that the ACT government down in London Circuit, they just want you to believe that these laws, they're just not controversial. Nothing to say here. But they really do bring under threat the ability for our kids to grow up in safe environments. They bring into doubt the safety that we all take for granted and walking the streets without concern, worry or fear. You know, it's a feeling that a lot of people overseas and internationally, that the safety that we have in our streets is something many nations would aspire to, many communities would aspire to. Yet those in the ACT now seem to be set and intent on a way to make people in Canberra feel less safe in their own city. And I think that the lack of willingness, particularly from the Labor government, I mean, it's just what should we expect, though? The fact that they are dismissing this out of hand with zero regard for those families who've expressed concern, those families that have lost children to drug addiction, those families that have got children battling drug addiction, and the fact that, you know, they have no interest in hearing from those families in Canberra and what impacts this could have on them and children that they may have dealing with addiction, or how it makes them feel having lost children to drug overdoses. But these are the things that the ALP and, of course, the ACT, ALP Greens government are completely blind to. The ACT government's Drugs of Dependence Personal Use Amendment Act 2022 will commence on October 28th and was just rushed through the Territory Legislative Assembly as a private member's bill to avoid any real scrutiny. And I do note that Senator Shoebridge in his contribution said that the inquiry that had apparently been held by the ACT government showed that there was 100% support from everyone. Everyone thought this was a cracking idea, 100% support. And if we need to go back and check the Hansard, I think we could, because he said there was 100% support, because I particularly remember Senator Brockman calling out, really, 100%? Wow, that's extraordinary. So if it was so confident of this 100% support, I think that, you know, why are they afraid of an inquiry? Let these experts come and tell us. Let them come and tell us what rolling out the red carpet for with drug cocktails upon arrival, with ice, heroin, cocaine, speed, acid and other drugs upon arrival. I mean, obviously this is the way the Greens do their national conference, roll out the green carpet and hand out the drugs. I mean, can I just, as an aside, I used to love always going out with Senator Heffernan when it was time for election day on a polling booth, and he used to go and helpfully suggest to those on the booth working for the Greens that he'd help them hand out, at which point he used to walk around handing out their how to vote, suggesting free drugs for everyone. So funny they used to get a bit upset about that, but it turns out Bill was pretty much on the money, as he so often was, Senator Heffernan. But why would our nation's capital be so eager to garner the reputation of being Australia's drug capital? Why would they want that as their moniker? This selfish and ill-conceived policy doesn't consider the implications of their drug laws filtering into the adjacent states. As a New South Wales senator, New South Wales police have voiced concerns in the past with cannabis legislation in the ACT, and that would set up the drug trade to filter into New South Wales, making New South Wales drug policing all the more difficult. Despite the ACT government running from scrutiny, we in the federal government, we just shouldn't do it in the federal, Senator. And Through you, Mr Acting Deputy President, if perhaps we could have some order at the end of the chamber. The courtesy was granted to Senator Shoebridge to be heard in silence. It would be helpful for him to return the favour.
Please take your seat. Order. I've called the chamber to order, Senator Shoebridge. I ask that you remain in silence and give the senator the opportunity to be able to speak in silence as you were given when you were speaking. Thank you. Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. Maybe someone's looking for one of those downers. You know, 2 weeks you'll be able to legally carry it.
Senator Shoebridge, you're now disregarding the order I've given.
You finished?
No, Senator Hughes. Direct through me, please.
So, as we would expect, I mean, we can see from those, obviously, they're all going to buddy up together again to ensure that there's no transparency, and I think that that is just a continuation of the appalling behaviour that we have seen from this Labor-Greens-Pocock alliance. We have tried, and in the past there has been inquiries to look at these sorts of legislative issues that come through and via the territories. In fact, in the past decade, and only recently, there's inquiries. In fact, an inquiry was recently undertaken at the behest of Senator Pocock into the management of federal horses in the Australian Alps. He was pretty keen for us to push that one forward. In fact, that was his idea. But whoa, no, now it's trampling on the Canberrans' rights, the ACT's rights. The Commonwealth Games cancellation and the need for nationally consistent approaches to national alcohol-fuelled violence. So it doesn't take much thought power to see that on the face alone, the ACT is about to unleash something that goes well beyond its borders and as such requires national leadership and federal scrutiny and possible intervention. So to the details. What does this bill actually entail? Well, among other things, this bill allows a person to carry out 1.5 grams of ice, 1.5 grams of cocaine or a gram of heroin without the fear of any criminal conviction or any punishment more than a small fine. And these aren't recreational drugs we're talking about here. These are highly addictive, they're life-altering, psychosis-inducing, family-destroying drugs that this government wants to allow people to access without concern. And in fact, the ACT government seems to think that dealing with people's addiction and the incarceration that could possibly flow on from that addiction is to actually just reduce the punishment. Because how could these poor people be punished for being deeply addicted to an illicit substance, aside from the fact personal use, recreational use? People have free will and, you know, that must be respected and they have to live with their choices. But we should provide supports and frameworks to help people break the cycle of drug addiction, to help them break the cycle of drug use, which could lead to imprisonment. But we shouldn't remove in total the carriages of justice because of this. In fact, we need to step up and make sure that we are working with those people that are utilising these substances instead of risking the release of both the revolting and the criminal. You're enticing young people who are still mentally developing to succumb to peer pressure, as we know teenagers and young people like to try things, and you are just now opening up the door to allow them to try drugs without any fear of punishment that would normally be there. And we do know that 1 gram of heroin is up to 5 times the lethal average dose. Now, I mean, I assume that the ACT government is going to have some sort of warning. I don't know, maybe it can be like cigarette packets that they can have on their little baggies with their gram of heroin, that, you know, 5 servings, this is 5 doses, making sure people know not to take the whole hit at the same time. But of course, you know, I assume that there'll be a drug use guide going out with the ACT to make sure that whilst it may be 1 gram for personal use, that is actually a potentially 5 times fatal dose. And let's hope that these people aren't trying it for the first time and think, well, if the ACT government tells me 1 gram's okay for personal use, it must be okay for me to just use the whole whack in one go. But how will we know? But the police are going to be dealing with this. And I think the other thing that's interesting is we hear smug and smirks, and we hear a lot of smug, smirks and derogatory comments coming from those at the end of the chamber. And what we're going to hear from them when we start to see a spike in criminal activity in the ACT, when we see an increase in crimes like burglary and theft and car break-ins, because people that want to have that gram of heroin, people that want to have that 1.5 grams of ice for their personal use, quite often don't have the cash just laying around for it. So by opening up the doors and increasing this level of access, we're going to see an increase in the level of crime so they can access the drugs that they can then legally carry around. And so it'll be interesting to see whether we hear from those opposite, and particularly those who represent people in the ACT, whether or not that they'll have any concerns when the crime rate goes up, and that, of course, this will not have been caused. There'll be no causation between their open and free drug policies and driving increases in crime. But, you know, it'd be interesting too to see what do they think the benefit is? What's the upshot for them here? Don't know. Anyone know what the upshot is? Because we know from those examples we've heard overseas that there has been nothing but downsides for those communities who have liberalised any of their drug policies. And, I mean, just to reiterate what Senator Scarr was saying, I hear from friends of mine who used to live in San Francisco and the state of the place now. And in fact, when you go into a hotel, of which there are less and less of them in San Francisco because the tourism market's basically gone, that you actually walk through a sort of like almost you think foot and mouth, what you walk through to clean the bottom of your shoes. But that's because there's so much human faeces on the streets of San Francisco now that you actually have to clean your shoes going into hotels. It's absolutely disgraceful. It's heartbreaking for what was such a beautiful city to now just be a complete and utter basket case. And it has been driven by democratic governments over there and their liberal policies around social issues such as drugs. And these, you know, we know that ICE and we know that the AMA, in particular, that one of those 100% I'm sure that was supportive at the inquiry. But when they wanted to talk about methamphetamine, the AMA said there's clear medical advice that methamphetamine, and particularly crystal methamphetamine, ICE, is a very harmful drug at the individual, community and societal levels. Methamphetamine is not a recreational, soft or party drug and should never be referred to as such. Every effort must be made to avoid normalising methamphetamine use or minimising its harmful effects. Acute methamphetamine psychosis is one of the most damaging health consequences of methamphetamine use. Acutely, it presents a major safety issue for healthcare staff and the intoxicated patient and his and her family. So ice-induced psychosis leads to paranoid delusions, hallucinations, severe aggression and violent behaviour. So I also hope we don't hear from any of those opposite who are going to team up together to stop this inquiry going forward through you, Mr Acting Deputy President. I don't want to hear one of them cry and talk about what happens if a nurse or a doctor is attacked in a hospital while someone's having one of an ice psychosis episode, whilst they were walking around carrying their 1.5 grams of ice without any impact whatsoever. It is absolutely disgraceful, and the contempt that is being demonstrated towards the police, towards ambulance services, towards the frontline health services like doctors and nurses in public hospitals, all so that you can claim that you are somehow liberalising and supporting recreational drug use. It's just an insult. It's an insult to everybody, and people know it because this is about an inquiry to make sure, you know, if there's 100% support, then what are they afraid of? Maybe they should welcome the inquiry. That 100% of people are going to turn up and go, yeah, it's great, free drugs for everyone. Hefo was on the mark. But no, I think there's probably more of a point that that's not going to be what people are saying. People are going to be saying that there's huge risks here and lots of risks for those who I've just mentioned, the police, the ambulance, the doctors and the nurses at the forefront. And I just do want to say to the parents out there who look at these things in Canberra and really do fear for their children, you know, having just been accused as being from the 50s or maybe, you know, whatever, I mean, insult they come up with as intellectually bereft at the other end of the chamber. You know, it's just, you know, I'm a parent of teenagers. I know many of us have got kids and we worry about these things. We don't want our kids to have access to these drugs, and particularly these drugs that are synthetic, that they are dangerous, they are unknown, and the lifelong ramifications that they have and, you know, have been shown to have, and life-ruining impacts for not only the child or the teenager or young person who takes these drugs, but for their family, and the total contempt that those opposite, as they continue to buddy up with their Greens and Pocock alliance, and the contempt that they show for those families. Shame on you. Absolute shame. But then again, what else could we expect from this mob?